Okay, a video on a couple of news items that appeared around about the 5th of September in my breaking news Fertaid videos. Okay, in today's item, we're looking at overseas donor errors becoming the liability of local clinics, past practices with respect to sperm donation becoming the liability of current organisations, doctors responding to the screening of embryos, and fertility taking on new meanings where single women using IVF claim government support for infertile women needs to be expanded to an overall fertility treatment. Okay. As always, a welcome and disclaimer. My name's James Danger, an embryologist with more than 50 years experience. I'm not a medical person and this information is not medical advice, but it may help you in knowing what questions to ask about your treatment with your doctor, and maybe it may help in understanding the advice you receive. If you would like to promote your company or clinical product, by all means contact me regarding using this page to do so. You can support my site by subscribing or just make a donation using my GoFund page. But whatever you do, please leave a comment and please tick like to feel loved. Okay, the first of four papers. This occurred in Medical Express by Karen Hammerberg and is looking at the issue of overseas sperm donors. So on Monday, an ABC investigation revealed a Brisbane couple had signed a non-disclosure agreement after discovering that sperm from the wrong overseas donor had been used to conceive their child, who was born in 2014. The same fertility clinic had kept secret an audit that found that there was high risk that the sperm frozen before 2020 did not match the donor on the label. I don't think that's quite true. This includes sperm from 2 overseas banks. I don't actually think it's an overstatement. It's well known that informal sperm donation, where people find a sperm donor online, is risky, but now formal sperm donation is in the spotlight. So how is it regulated and what to do about donors? Just how safe is it? Well, Karen goes on to talk about, as demand for donor sperm in Australia far outstrips supply, clinics import sperm from international sperm banks, mostly in the US and Denmark. And one of the reasons in short supply is that the Australian government requires donors to donate altruistically and only to cover the costs. If they actually change their mind and allow donors to supply their semen for a fee, that is, they're not altruistic donation, there will be a lot more donors available in Australia and you will not need to import them as much from overseas. So this is a problem of Australia's own making. There is no national data on the proportions of sperm donation techniques that involve overseas or domestic donors. However, in 2024, Karen reports that clinics in Victoria stored sperm from 578 donors that the patients had recruited locally, 1,001 donors that clinics had recruited through their own sperm bank, and 47 donors recruited from overseas. However, the overseas donors are only just a very small pool of the overall recruitment. Making a mountain out of a molehill. Choosing a clinic and an overseas donor can, however, be difficult. It also comes with additional risks, such as the donor having donated to many clinics and people discovering their children had dozens or hundreds of half-siblings around the world. And as demonstrated by the recent sperm mix-up report, the double Witzing procedures that are now required in IVF may not have occurred in some imported sperm samples. The rules for imported sperm vary slightly by state, but essentially they are the same as those for domestic donors. Here's another paper, which I only found out through Google. Aussie shock, 77 siblings discovery amid concerning boom in unregulated sperm donation. So I don't know how correct this is, but the paper made an interesting point about managing sperm donors, and that is, amid mounting concerns about the lack of regulatory oversight and the rise of informal sperm donation on social media, an Australian woman has revealed she recently discovered she has an astonishing 77 siblings after an IVF clinic used one donor's sperm countless times. Conceived via IVF through a sperm donor in Queensland Fertility Group, Lyndall Bubke said her known 77 siblings might even just be the tip of the iceberg. She first made the unsettling discovery after taking an ancestry test online. Apparently, the donor donated 325 times, and they kept using that sperm for years and years and years, she said. Now, whether that's true or not, but that's what she believes to have happened, she told the program, adding that she believes the true number of half-siblings she related to may be more, between 250 and 300, all born through different clinics. So in some states, there are regulations on how many samples, how many women can conceive through a donor. So the donor may be used for many different couples, but normally they stop using it after 10 separate conceptions. But every clinic will be different, and some sperm will be highly sought after by clients, and so I can see why that may have occurred, unless there is very tight rules on the number of conceptions per donor. But I can tell you that it's very hard to manage internally. They've written the code for that. So, for its part, Queensland Fertility Group provided a statement to the ACA saying that it had deep empathy for the women. These historical cases occurred over a decade ago and relate to sperm donated over 20 years when QFG was overseen by a former board and management. Practices that were once standard, such as anonymous donation and single witnessing to confirm identity, have since been replaced by more rigorous protocols. Now, once again, this is interesting because IVF in Australia goes back to 1982, and there will be a lot of work that's done where there'll be doctors and scientists working in that field have long since retired, including me. So whereabouts is the liability extended to the current operations of the clinic, and should there be some caveat about how old cases can have liability attached to it? The third article came in a Medlinks link, and it's this ongoing debate about screening of embryos. So in this article, and the link is down the bottom there, the biotech company claims to offer the first genetic optimization software built for longevity at every stage of life to enable parents to screen embryos for a range of conditions. The company allows couples to screen up to 20 embryos against 900 hereditary conditions, together with 40 other analyses to best determine which of the embryos are most likely to grow to lead a long and healthy life. But experts are skeptical. So there's more questions than answers, and the article goes on. It's worth reading, actually. So while the company claims their technology will help intended parents understand the complete genetic profile of each of their embryos, the experts we spoke to will say it raises more complex questions. Put it this way, what is often missing in these conversations is the realistic understanding of the fact that most intended patients who undergo IVF will only ever have a limited number of embryos from which to choose. And most people only have 2 or 3 or 4. So more questions than answered. As they say, as the number of conditions for which an embryo are screened increases and will continue to increase because of the nature of genetic analysis, the chance of finding an unaffected embryo significantly decreases, she explained. Decisions regarding which embryo to transfer become increasingly more complex. How is one to decide whether to transfer the embryo that might have a greater chance of longevity, but an increased risk of a chronic disease that is not life-threatening? Limiting. Additionally, and this I think is a really interesting one, once the best embryo has been transferred, what does that mean for the second or third best embryos? Will the resulting children be seen as diminished? And what does this say about parenthood and the value of individual life? So the real concern here is that every embryo you produce will have some flaw and some advantages, and they'll have to choose. But once you choose the first one, the remaining embryos will be seen to be second best. And some patients will still want them to put them back because they just want to fall pregnant. And the exercise screening is just a bit of fun, but knowledge is something which is not forgotten, and they'll always be on the lookout for these dysfunctions. The real concern will be that a couple won't want the remaining embryos, so we'll have a big pool of perfectly healthy embryos with some trait the couple didn't want, languishing in cryo storage, or more likely offered up for donation to other couples, where couples are accepting an embryo that has been screened for some conditions which may not be desirable. It's going to be a nightmare, and clinics really do need to start getting their head around how they're going to process this. The best way is just not to do it. And the last thing is an article that came from the ABC in Australia. Solo mother seeks financial and emotional compensation over discriminatory fertility policy. In short, up until this year, socially infertile women generally had to pay for at least 2 rounds of fertility procedures before they were treated as medically infertile. So the concept here is that government support is to help infertile women have children and has not really to do with fertility treatment. And the get around courses in terms of Medicare is that after 2 goes of social infertility treatment, if you're not pregnant, therefore you must be infertile, therefore we'll pay for further treatment. So class action is alleging that the policy, which was changed in April, unlawfully prevented people from accessing rebates and breached the Sex Discrimination Act. What's next? The class action is seeking compensation for financial losses and emotional pain. And what we're seeing here is the slow but continuous impact of social fertility treatment of single and gay couples who are not infertile but are seeking to use the technology for a variety of reasons and being excluded from compensation because they're not infertile. And clinics are very quickly will be going from being an infertility clinic to a fertility clinic. So, in review, I can see these 4 articles all give you clues that clinics are under a lot of social pressures. They're also, the pressures certainly come from overseas donors where the liability on the local clinic may be absorbed from errors occurring overseas. So clinics need to have more and more disclaimers to indicate that when they do a treatment using a procured sperm donor locally or overseas, that they are not liable for the outcome. But also clinics need to lift their act to make sure that the donors can be identified as to their source. And our real concern, of course, is past practices with respect to sperm donation. When does that become the liability of the current organisations? I'm sure a lot of boards are scrambling to try and work out where their liability lies from companies that they have bought. And there's been a lot of amalgamations from small local clinics into large corporations like Virtus and Monash, where they're all bought under a publicly listed company, where liability is a major issue. And lastly, that fertility takes on a new meaning where single women using IVF claim the government support for infertile women needs to be expanded to fertility treatment. The changing nature of IVF from infertility treatment to fertility is well and truly underway. One thing I think will happen, though, is with more clinics being absorbed into larger public companies, the legal consequences of these shifts in social pressures will become a problem of what services to provide. And I can anticipate that what will happen is large corporations, publicly listed companies, will increasingly cease to offer some services where their liability is exposed. I think this has been a good news review. I hope you've enjoyed it. Leave a comment if you think any of the issues are worthy of debate. I'd like to thank you. I always acknowledge that IVF is a personal journey that involves the actions of many different techniques and people and ideas, and it helps to understand all aspects of that journey. I hope this information may be of value. If you like it, tell everyone else in your social network how good this website is. Okay, till next time, thank you.